The US envoy to Ukraine has praised President Zelensky as a courageous leader and said they had positive discussions in Kiev. The comments posted by Keith Kellogg on X within the last hour come after a turbulent week in US, Ukraine and Russia relations. I spoke to the White House reporter for Washington for Politico, Daniel Littman, and he told me whether he thought that the US is taking Mr. Trump's criticism of Ukraine seriously or whether ultimately there will be a deal with Mr. Zelensky.
Well, what's interesting is that Zelensky was the first person who actually proposed the rare earth mineral deal to Trump. And so this is a way for him to continue to get military assistance. But of course, there's people in Ukraine who are saying, hey, this amounts to reparations and we were not the aggressor. But Trump is a very transactional president. And so if he thinks he can get something out of Ukraine and it would compensate the U.S. for all of the money, the billions of dollars we've spent on Ukraine, then they will take that. The ironic thing is that a lot of that rare earth is lithium. And Trump is against electric cars, and lithium is a very important element in electric cars. So it's a little bit of a dichotomy here in that sense.
What's the wider political and public reaction been to this very sharp change in position on both Moscow and the US's traditional allies here in Europe and to a degree in the UK? Is this something that you think has wider support in the Republican Party, which obviously many of those veteran political members have been through the Cold War?
Yeah, well, the Cold War was a long time ago. And so people who are growing up in the Republican Party today, they don't have memories of that. And so we used to do lots of business with Russia. We didn't expect that to change. And so I think that there is a lot of war fatigue in America, given the 20 years we spent in Iraq and Afghanistan and the trillions of dollars and thousands of lives. And so there is a isolationist tendency in the Republican Party these days. What's ironic is that Mike Waltz, the national security advisor to Trump, and Marco Rubio used to be very pro-Ukraine a few years ago when the war first started, and now they're having to toe Trump's line to not get too ahead of their boss and not appear like they're criticizing Trump. And so Marco Rubio is now in the position of having to reassure the Europeans, we're not going to abandon Europe. We haven't become allies with Russia. But there's still backbiting in the Republican Party, with the chairman of the Senate Armed Service Committee said that Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, was parroting Tucker Carlson talking points on Ukraine.
And next week, we're seeing President Macron of France and Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the UK coming to DC. Is there anything that they can offer that will temper Donald Trump's position? You know, what does the US need from Europe and the UK that they can usefully offer as leverage?
Well, I think what those European leaders are going to be telling Trump is, hey, we're increasing defense spending a lot. We'll continue to help Ukraine, that you don't want to cut a deal that invites Putin to start this war over in a few years after he rearms. And so they feel like it's very responsible for them to go to Washington to try to convince Trump face to face. But of course, Trump feels like he was elected on a mandate of stopping this war. And he doesn't think that spending another few years arming Ukraine is actually going to change the contours of the deal, that it's basically a stalemate and they should just kind of make a deal now to end the bloodshed.
And when Trump has been talking in recent times about putting out the fires, ending these wars and then focusing on China, is that seen as being politically naive, or is that genuinely what he's trying to achieve here? And this sort of sense of real haste in trying to sort out a deal with Russia and Ukraine?
Yeah, he wants the positive headlines of being a peacemaker. He maybe wants to get the Nobel Peace Prize if he ends this war and it doesn't restart. But this is someone who has also praised President Xi as a strong leader. He is a big fan of the Chinese president. And so for him to focus on China, well, what does that actually mean in terms of getting results for America? And what message does the U.S. abandoning Ukraine, if we do that, send to Taiwan, which feel like, hey, they're next in the line of fire, and they're hoping that the U.S. would support them if there's ever a Chinese invasion.
Daniel Littman there, Washington reporter for Politico in the US.